So after seeing the background and evolution of student mentor program and what is student mentor program, we have also seen how the student mentor team is organized. We have seen how many mentors are there in the ISMP and how many companions are there in the ISCP. We will then see how the students are selected for their roles, either as mentors or as companions. Selection of overall coordinators. See, please note, this is the most critical selection that we are doing. Why is it the most critical? Because the student mentor program is not run. It is not run, and I want to emphasize this. It is not run by the faculty coordinator. I am not the person involved in running the student mentor program. My job is to facilitate whatever is required for the student mentor program. The student mentor program is essentially run by the overall coordinators. So therefore it is extremely important to make sure that you get the selection right. Right? So therefore, how do we go about selecting these overall coordinators? First, of course, we put out an advertisement and then we seek applications from all intending applicants. Then we scrutinize the applications to make sure that they all meet the eligibility requirements. Then there is a peer review which is conducted. And the peer review, the peer review, we actually seek names from the applicants as to whom they would like to have reviews from. And then we seek reviews from those reviewers and read those reviews, understand about something about the applicant, and then an interview is conducted by the student mentor coordinators. The student mentor coordinators who are the existing student mentor coordinators. Of course, they are going to be handing over the reins to the new overall coordinators after their term is over. But during the end of their tenure, they conduct this process. They conduct the process of interviewing the student mentor coordinators. Now, following the interview of the student mentor coordinators, then there is a second interview. This is a second interview that is conducted by a panel consisting of the deans as well as the faculty coordinator of the student mentor program. Now, after this interview by this panel, names are recommended. Now, these names have to go to the director for approval. Now, of course, you will be wondering, well, this is a student mentor program and you are appointing the overall coordinators for the student mentor program. And why is it that the names of the student mentor coordinators, the overall coordinators of SMP, why do those names have to go to the director? The names have to go to the director because the overall coordinators who have been appointed as the, who have been appointed for the student mentor program, well, these overall coordinators are going to be members of our Senate. They are also going to be members of our UGPC, that is the Undergraduate Programs Committee. So that means we are giving them a lot of responsibility. These 2 or 3 students that I am talking about, the ones who are in charge of the ISMP, they are giving them a lot of responsibility. We are giving them a seat on the Senate and we are also giving them a seat on our UGPC. And being members of the Senate and being members of the Undergraduate Programs Committee, we are giving them, we are trusting responsibility on them, and therefore it is very important that when they are in those positions, they impact our academic programs positively. So that is the reason why those names have to be approved by the director. So this is the first point that I want you to note, that we are not only giving them responsibility, but we are also recognizing the fact that we are giving them responsibility. This is very important. Very important because recently I had a talk with one of the SMP coordinators of a sister IIT, and he was just asking me as to how is the student mentor program going on at IIT Bombay. I said it's going on very well. And then he says, well, it is not so good at my place. And then I asked him what's the reason. And then after discussion I realized, well, that they are giving them the responsibility, but they are not recognizing the fact that these are the people who have the responsibility. So it's very important to give the responsibility and also to recognize the fact that they hold that responsibility. Right? Okay, so this is about the selection of the overall coordinators. And again, when we are interviewing the candidates, it's important to note what is it that we look for in these mentor coordinators. We look for the fact whether they are able to work in a team. Now, forget about working in a team. They actually have to build the team. They are the ones who have to build the teams and they are the ones who have to work with the team. So therefore, it's a very important position that they hold. These 2 or 3 coordinators have to build this entire team of about 80 ISMP mentors and about 200 or so the DM mentors. So it's a very big team that they have to build. That means they have to select the right people. So they have to work well in a team and also get work done through that team. They also have to uphold very high ethical standards because they are also expecting the same high ethical standards from their team members. So it's important that they hold very high ethical standards. They should possess crisis management skills and presence of mind. See, these are things that we are trying to interview them. These are things that we are trying to find out when we interview. Possessing crisis management skills, because a crisis actually does not come calling, it just simply lands up at the doorstep. And when the crisis lands up at their doorsteps, they have to have the presence of mind and they have to have the skills to manage that crisis at that very moment. Especially middle of the night, they end up with a crisis like this. Then the ability to deal with some sensitive issues that may crop up during their tenure, and they have to deal with those sensitive issues very diplomatically. They have to be creative, innovative, and willing to take on more responsibility. So these are some of the qualities that we look for in the mentor coordinators. Now, how do we go about selecting the student mentors? Now, here I'm talking about the 80 ISMP mentors. How do we go about selecting them? Well, it's again a 4-stage selection process. There is a scrutiny of the applications, review being sought from the mentors, outgoing mentors, then obtaining the peer reviews and conducting the interviews. Now, I will not go into the details simply because later on our student mentor coordinators are going to tell you all about this procedure that is followed at IIT Bombay, and they're going to also pose some questions to you that if you have to do something very similar in your institution, how are you going to proceed? So these are some of the interactive sessions that we're going to have immediately following my presentation here. So I will not go into the details here because the details you can listen to from our mentor coordinators. But what is it that we are looking for and how do we assess an applicant? Now this is very important. What is it that we look for? When we're saying, okay, we want to appoint you as a mentor, what is it that we look for? First thing that you have to keep in mind, that mentoring is not a science. Okay, you cannot mentor somebody by following some list of instructions. Mentoring is actually an art. And there are many different ways of mentoring, and there are as many ways of mentoring as number of human relationships. In fact, if one mentor has got, let us say, about 8 mentees, then he is very unlikely to mentor all the 8 mentees in a similar fashion. It is impossible. So therefore, there is nothing like a science in mentoring. It is more of an art. Mentoring is not an ego game. In fact, in mentoring, if there is any trace of self-importance on the part of the mentor, it is actually very self-destructive. So therefore, when you're looking for a possible applicant and you're looking for an applicant for a position of a mentor, then you have to ensure that the person is not having any of these, it is not having a trace of this self-importance. Mentoring means responsibility. Mentoring, what has happened is our mentor program has attained a certain status among the student community. And students actually, all our students actually look up to a mentor. And many times what happens is that we get applicants who look upon this position as if it's a glamorous position. And they all want to be a part of this glamour. But you see, unfortunately for them, and fortunately for us, the mentoring is not a glamorous position, but it is a position of responsibility. So this is what we impress upon the candidate as soon as he comes for the interview. Look, if you are looking for a glamorous position, this is not for you. Mentoring means setting aside desires. Setting aside desires because, you see, mentoring means that you should be willing to work with the people as the way they are, not as the way you would like them to be. Because you cannot say, once you are a mentor, you cannot say, I wish my mentee was more hardworking. No, you cannot say that. You cannot say, I wish my mentee would listen to me more. You cannot say that. You have to work with the person the way he is. So that is why you need to set aside your desires and work with the people the way they are. Mentoring means loyalty. Mentoring means being patient and realizing that it takes time to bring people onto your side. That means you cannot expect somebody to change overnight. Just because you say that, well, you should start working hard from tomorrow, that's not going to happen. Right? So therefore, one needs to be patient. So therefore, when one is interviewing a mentor, applicant for the position of a mentor, one needs to ensure that the person is a person who has patience, who exercises patience. Mentoring means also service. Seeing mentoring more than a job. Mentoring is not just a 9 to 5 job. You cannot say 5 o'clock my job of mentoring is over, I switch off. Well, that is not going to happen because mentoring is actually a 24/7 responsibility. It is not even a job, it is a responsibility. You have a responsibility to your mentee. So that is a 24/7 responsibility. Right, so this is about the assessing, how you go about assessing a mentor. But now let us look at the kind of interaction that exists between the mentors and the mentee. And I just want to quickly, say what is it that our mentors do. In fact, even before the new entrants arrive on campus, our mentors send out these emails and letters welcoming them to the campus and also introducing them to the campus, the life here on campus. And then they also open an online discussion wherein the new entrants can actually pose questions, they can pose their queries and get those queries answered. So this is one of the initiatives taken by the Student Mentor Program even before the new entrants join the campus. Second, they also administer an English proficiency test, and I told you a little while ago that medium of instruction, there are issues associated with the medium of instruction. So we do administer an English proficiency test right immediately after the orientation is over. The orientation, which is held on the very first day, that is a program which goes on for about 1.5 hours or 2 hours, and immediately after that we have this English language test that is given to all the new entrants, and then those papers are evaluated, and about 80 students who score very poorly in this English proficiency test, they are strongly advised to undergo a 60-hour English language training program. Now this is an English language training program conducted by the British Council through the course of the year. So for 1 full year, it's a 60 hours of English language training program that the students go through. Of course, the Student Mentor Program is not directly involved in this English language training program, but the Student Mentor Program assigns teaching assistants to the program so that the students remain focused and motivated to learn English and continue to learn English outside the class hours. So this is the second activity that the ISMP does immediately after the students join. And then I just want to tell you something about the relationship between the mentor and the mentee. The mentor wants to ensure that the mentee adjusts quickly to the life here on campus. Therefore, we tell the new entrants right on the day of the orientation that they should develop a close rapport with their mentor. And the mentor can help the mentee overcome any social problems that is expected, and is expected to demonstrate a very caring attitude towards the mentee. But of course, we also make sure and we tell the mentee that it's important that you become independent and self-reliant. So the mentee should not become dependent on the mentor. The mentee has to also grow on his own. So the mentee needs to become independent and self-reliant. Mentor can help with difficulties. Now this is very important. You see, mentor can help with the difficulties, whatever difficulties that the mentee has. But the mentor is strictly advised not to teach the mentee. Mentor should not teach the mentee. This is important because many a time this gets, somewhere after I make a presentation, sometimes people take back thinking that mentor can teach the mentee. No, because after all, mentor is also a student. And if he has learned wrong concepts, then he will be teaching the wrong concepts to his mentee. So therefore, it's very important that the mentor does not teach, even though he may think that he has done very well. He has done very well in the course, he has got an A grade, but still we tell him, please don't teach your mentee. What is it that the mentor can do? The mentor can actually go about setting up a help session. He can set up a help session either with the instructor or with the teaching assistant and provide the required help for his mentee. Now this is what he can do, but he is advised not to teach the mentee. Of course, now there is no ragging, so I would not like to say anything about that. Mentor will also ensure that no activity is forced upon his mentee. No activity is forced upon the mentee by any seniors. But of course, if any activity is going to be helpful to the mentee, then he may actually encourage the mentee to take up some of these activities. It may be a sports activity, it may be cultural activity. The mentor may actually encourage the mentee to take up some of these activities if required. Mentor will identify and clear any misconceptions that the mentee may acquire, and mentors are actually very positive influences. They inspire good values and good ethics in the mentees. Of course, our mentors maintain good confidentiality and professionalism at all times. This is very important because a lot of information may flow between the mentee and the mentor. For example, the mentee may talk to the mentor and talk about the problems that he's having in his family, the problem that he's having with his parents, with his mother, brother, etc. So it is very important that the mentor does not go around, telling about these problems about his mentees to other mentors or with anybody else, because the moment that happens, the mentee will simply clam up. After that, he is not going to communicate with the mentor. So therefore, it is important that the mentor maintains confidentiality and professionalism at all times. Okay, mentors are senior students who volunteer. Now, somebody was asking me before lunch whether the mentors are paid something. No. We don't pay our mentors anything. All that, if it is required, all that we do is to provide them at the end of their tenure, we give them a certificate. That is all that we provide to the mentors. Then why is it, you may ask, why is it that people, so many people, volunteer? In fact, 350 students apply for this position, and we take only about 80 applicants for this mentor's position. Then why is it that it has acquired such a status? It has acquired a status over a period of time. It has not happened overnight. It has happened over a period of time. The students who were themselves benefited from this program would like to contribute to this program, and they would like to contribute more than what they have received from the program. This is how the program is going to grow. So this has happened over a period of time. And today, of course, neither do our mentors expect anything, nor do we give them anything. All that we do is give them a pat on the back at the end of their tenure in the form of a small certificate. That is all that they receive. But still, our mentors are very motivated, and of course, there is also the joy of helping others, and that joy is immeasurable. Only the person who has gone through this program, who has helped his mentee, and when the mentee comes back at the end of the tenure, when the mentee comes back and says, "Thank you very much, I was really benefited through your experience, I was really benefited through your tenure," that is the joy that the mentor receives at the end of the program. So this is the joy that our mentors receive, and this is an immeasurable thing. You cannot measure this. And of course, I know of several mentors and the mentees who have remained in touch, not just during the 1 year of tenure, but even after the 1 year of tenure, after the mentor has gone abroad, the mentor has joined some other company, the mentee has continued to keep in touch with his mentor. And today when the mentee, once upon a time he was a mentee in his first year, but the mentee has now turned into a mentor because he wants to give back to the program. The previous mentor comes back and is very proud that his mentee has now become the mentor. And this is how, I can tell you, this is how the program has been growing over the period of time in this institute. Okay, now coming to the art and practice of mentoring. Now this is, again, after having, narrated about our experience in the mentor program for quite some time, I don't know whether I have really conveyed to you what is meant by mentoring. So mentoring, you would have probably got this idea that mentoring means, helping somebody. What kind of help? Well, okay, I don't know, where is the bank? Can you help me locate the bank? Okay, you give him the direction. This is how you go to reach the State Bank of India located on the campus. Or somebody says that, well, I don't know where to buy a bucket because I need a bucket to take bath. So where do I buy a bucket? A mentor gives an advice. But this is all, some very trivial tasks that the mentor is performing. I would say, and the mentor would also agree with me, that these are all very trivial tasks. Then what exactly is mentoring? Now, what exactly is mentoring? I have a very nice description of what is meant by mentoring. Now, please understand what is meant by mentoring. Mentoring is the process. Mentoring is the process, I'll read this. Mentoring is the process of walking along beside the mentee with the aim of helping that mentee achieve his or her potential. This is what is mentoring. Mentoring is the process. Process means it takes time. You understand process. Process means something which takes time. Mentoring is not an activity. Then it would have said mentoring is an activity. No, mentoring is not an activity. Mentoring is also not a series of activities that you perform. That is also not mentoring. You cannot say, well, how did you mentor? I told him how to go and register for the courses. I told him how to go and pay his fees. Okay, you have given him some help, but that is not mentoring. You have performed a series of activities, but that is not mentoring. Mentoring is a process which is going to take time, and you have been given a time of 1 year, and that is the duration of your tenure. So you are going to mentor your mentee for a period of 1 year. Mentoring is a process of walking along beside. Walking along beside does not mean literally walking. It does not mean that you walk along with your mentee from the hostel to the classroom and classroom to the hostel. That is not what is meant by mentoring. Walking along beside means being available to the mentee. You are making yourself available to the mentee. That is what is walking along beside means. You see, it does not say walking ahead of the mentee. Walking ahead of the mentee would mean that you are giving some, laying down a set of principles and asking your mentee to walk in your footsteps. Okay, this is what I did in my first year. You also do the same things in the first year. That is not what is mentoring. Similarly, mentoring is not walking behind the mentee. If you're saying, I'm going to walk behind the mentee, it would mean what? It would mean that you're giving directions to the mentee. It means you're telling the mentee, okay, in the first semester, you take this course. In the first semester, in the second course that you are taking, in that course it's important that you do well in the second test. And if you want to do well in the second test, here is the reference book for you. Well, then you are actually giving some directions to the mentee. But is that mentoring? No, that is not what is mentoring. You're providing some help, but that is not what is mentoring. What is mentoring is walking along beside. That is making yourself available for the mentee. And whenever the mentee asks you, whenever he has any doubts, he feels free to ask you those doubts. And at the same time, you are inspiring your mentee. That is very important. You inspire the mentee. Why? With the aim of helping the mentee achieve his potential. With the aim of helping the mentee achieve his or her potential. Now, whose potential? It is the mentee's potential, not the mentor's potential. You understand this? The mentor is inspiring the mentee to achieve his or her potential, not the mentor's potential. It's very important because, a couple of years back, there was a student who was a mentor who wanted to see me, and he said, "Sir, I want to see you. I want to talk to you about my mentee." And immediately my reaction was, oh, so here is a mentor who wants to probably come and complain about his mentee. So he comes to me, and then I tell him, what is the problem? He says, "Sir, it's like this. The mentee whom you have assigned to me, this particular mentee is, he's brilliant." Okay, he used the word, he's brilliant, sir. He's very intelligent. He's brilliant. I said, okay, so what's the problem? He says, "So there's a small problem. You see, this particular mentee of mine, in his very first semester, he has ended up with A grades in all the courses, except in one course. As a result, his CPI, which is the same as SPI in the first semester, that is about 9.46. Okay, somewhere he has lost a grade, that is 9.4, but otherwise he's a very intelligent student." And I said, "What's the problem?" He says, "The problem is that, you see, in my first semester, I barely managed to get 7 points. I barely managed to get 7 points. So he says, so do you think, therefore, I should continue as his mentor, or would you like to change his mentor?" I was a little surprised by this question that was posed to me. But then I tell him that, you see, a mentor may be more accomplished than the mentee, or he may be less accomplished than the mentee. But a good mentor is the one who is able to inspire his mentee, who is able to help his mentee to achieve his potential. So in your case, you really have inspired your mentee to achieve his potential. The mentee has actually got 9.46. So if you think he is brilliant, then I think you should continue to mentor him in the second semester as well, and make sure that he is now more inspired and is able to achieve his full 10 points in the next semester. So point here is that, the good mentor is the one who is able to inspire his mentee to achieve the mentee's potential, not the mentor's potential. The mentor may be less accomplished, doesn't matter. Good mentor is the one who is able to inspire his mentee. So this is what is mentoring. So I hope I have conveyed to you what exactly is the feeling behind, or the sense behind the mentoring. Now, coming to the benefits. Now, again, some people do ask me, okay, if it's all voluntary, what does the mentor get? What does the mentor get? Probably ends up with a certificate, all right, but what does he get? And as I told you, the joy of mentoring is there. But in addition, the mentoring a freshman is an opportunity for these senior students who are able to inspire the development of his mentee, both intellectually as well as emotionally. And mentoring allows the mentors to share their life experiences, especially with people who would like to, also build their lives along their lines. So therefore, it is an opportunity for the senior students to inspire the junior students. So these are the benefits, and of course the joy of mentoring. Now again, as I told you, please note that you cannot give a set of instructions and say this is how you mentor, because mentoring is more of an art. So I cannot tell a set of students whom I have selected and say, go ahead and start mentoring. Now naturally they will say, okay, we are not got trained, we don't know how to do mentor, what do you mean by mentoring? All that I can offer, and I do offer in the very first meeting, is that I give them some tips on how to mentor. Now these are tips. Now these are tips that you can keep in mind before you go ahead and mentor. What is that first tip? Tip is to develop and sustain trust. Develop trust with your mentee and sustain that trust over a period of time. A mentor-mentee relationship, there has to be a trust. If the mentor does not trust the mentee does not trust the mentor, then there is no mentoring. No matter how many instructions or how many helpful advices he has given, there is no mentoring taking place. So first thing is that there has to be a foundation of trust. Mentoring rests on a foundation of trust. So how do you establish trust? It's very easy to say, go ahead and establish trust. How do you do that? Well, you have to establish a line of communication. First, you have to establish a line of communication. You should be able to communicate, not just talk, not just pick up a phone and say, hi, how are you doing? You're fine? Okay, fine, put the phone down. That is, you're just talk. There is no communication taking place there. So you have to establish a line of communication. To establish this line of communication, you need to be consistent. Consistent, and you need to keep your promises. That means the mentors have to be consistent in their approach towards the mentee, and they have to keep the promises. The promises that, well, I promise to meet my mentee, let's say at 5 o'clock on Mondays in the running ground or in the sports ground. I promise to meet my mentee. Well, the mentor has to be there 5 minutes before that appointment. He has to be there. And even if the mentee does not keep his end of the promise, it's important that the mentor presents himself at the appointed time, at the appointed place. Why? Because he has to impress upon the mentee that, after all, the mentor is there for him or for her. So he has to impress upon that. He has to convey. That's the reason why he has to keep his promises. And whatever the mentee says, whatever transpires between the mentor and the mentee has to remain in confidence. Now, this is what I told you earlier also, that it has to be in confidence. Because after all, if the mentor goes about talking about his mentee and the problems that his mentee faces, then the mentee is no longer going to communicate freely with his mentor. So it is important that whatever transpires remains in confidence. And of course, if the mentee is in some kind of a danger, then it is important not to keep that information confidential anymore, and that he has to go and alert all the authorities. So therefore, we are saying that the mentors have to keep things confidential, but to a certain extent. But the moment he feels that there is some kind of a danger to his mentee, he has to go and alert the authorities. Second tip is to be a friend. A mentor cannot be a substitute parent. He cannot be a substitute guardian. He cannot be a big brother for his mentor. He cannot be a big sister for the mentee. And he cannot also be seen as a figure of authority, because after all, there are several figures of authority. Why would the mentee want another figure of authority in the form of a mentor? So it is important that the mentor presents himself as a friend, and he has to focus on this bond of, focus on establishing this bond of warm friendship with the mentee. Another tip is to be positive. No matter how many examinations have gone badly for the mentee, no matter how many tests have gone badly for the mentee, it's important to be positive. It is important to be positive and also inspire the mentee to be positive. Okay, there's nothing like the end of the world for anybody. There's nothing like the end of the world. It's important to be positive and to present this positive demeanor to the mentee. So these are some of the tips that are offered. Develop and sustain trust with your mentee. Be a friend. Be positive. And most importantly, the mentor should enjoy his role as a mentor. Mentor should enjoy his role as a mentor. He should not look upon this as a burden. If he looks upon this as a burden, then there is no way he's going to be a good mentor to his mentee. So enjoy the role of a mentor. So these are some of of course, we also have a training program for the mentors. There is a powerful training program which we have developed, which our counseling services on IIT Bombay campus have developed with the help of Tata Institute of Social Sciences. And this is actually a 2-day training program for all our mentors. The first day is more about how do you go about helping people, what is meant by empathy, listening and attending skills, that is building a rapport with your mentee, and then questioning skills. How do you ask open-ended, non-judgmental questions to your mentee? The day 2 has to do with more with case studies, and how do you deal with all these case studies. Some of the case studies will be presented to you in the immediate session after my presentation. And the confidentiality that is to be maintained between the mentor and the mentee. And more importantly, the most importantly, I think, is the self-care for mentors. You see, when mentors get closely in touch with the mentee, what happens is that you should also be able to take care of your own mental health. Because after all, you cannot be burdened by the problems that are being faced by the mentee. Especially a very anxious mentee, if he is facing problems, well, those problems should not get transferred onto the mentor. So how do you take care of your own health when you're dealing with the mentee? So these are some of the things that the mentors are taught in the two-day workshop that is conducted. Okay, now coming to the future of the student mentor program, how did you find your mentor? See, we asked this, kind of take this feedback from the mentees, and we asked, how did you find your mentor's advice? And there is a very good response. 98% felt that they have been really benefited through this mentor program. Has your mentor made a positive impact on your life? And you find that yes, large number of students say it has made a positive impact on our life. Did you find the student companion program helpful? That is for the master's students. And again, you see a large number of students are very happy with our companion program as well as with the master's program. Now coming to the future, students these days are under tremendous stress. Of course, you all will agree with me that students these days are under more stress than what we were when we were going through the undergraduate program. They are under more stress simply because the competition is high, and at the same time there are more opportunities for the students. Previously there were not many opportunities. Well, you knew you had to just take your examinations, then go and have a very nice vacation. But then, these students these days are actually sitting down and doing something during the vacation because they want something to be added on to their CV. So they are under more stress these days. And at IIT Bombay, we believe that academics is important, and in fact, it's the most important. And the true importance of academics lies in how well it allows an individual to develop into a confident individual. So this is what we believe in IIT Bombay. And coming to the future, just a remark here, the student mentor program is destined to play a very vital role in the lives of the students. And this is the remark that was made in our 200th meeting of the Board of Governors, a very gratifying remark for us. And the observation go as follows. The Institute's student mentor program has made substantial strides in the last few years and seems destined to play a pivotal role in altering the student attitudes and therefore in enriching the student life here on campus. Right, so this is something about the, of course, our student mentor program. I told you has been growing and will continue to grow over the period of time. With that, I come to this part. I will now. Sorry, I'll just. Thank you very much, but I think I will require 10 minutes or 15 minutes more to give you some more examples. This is one example. No, after that we are going to have a breakaway session, right? We are going to have a breakaway session, but before we go for the breakaway session, I want to tell you that there are many more ways in which we involve the students. Many more ways in which we involve the students. We collaborate with the students and involve them in activities which promote institutional objectives. So I want to give you a list of those activities as well. So what is the title here? The title is multiplying. So as I told you, this is the theme. This is a theme under which the previous talk was also presented. The previous talk was multiplying the faculty efforts. How do we multiply the faculty efforts? Through faculty-student collaboration. Student mentor program came under this. Now let us see some other examples. Now you see, reputation of any institute is built largely by the faculty members. I'm sure there is no doubt about this. Probably you would all agree with me that the reputation of any institute is built largely by the faculty members. And the faculty members of any institute have multiple roles to play. Now one of the most important roles is to impart education to the students and to transform those students into productive and responsible members of the society. So this is one role that the faculty member has to play, a very vital role that the faculty member plays. But the second role is also important. The second role is to pursue research. A faculty member is expected to pursue research in an institution. This is the second role. The third role is to also administer the day-to-day activities of the institute. So these are the three roles that the faculty member has to play in an institution. But the Indian technical institutes, and we are all well aware of that, face severe shortage of faculty members. And as I said, even IIT Bombay, in some way, we are also short of faculty members. So when we are short of the faculty members, how do we achieve institutional objectives despite this faculty crunch? Now this is a major conundrum or major doubt that we have, and there are obviously no obvious answers to this. But nevertheless, I'll present to you what is it that we have done here at IIT Bombay. Let us again look at some of the institutional objectives. First institutional objective is to deliver high quality technical education. We have to deliver high quality technical education. Second, provide effective support system, and I told you how we do that at the previous presentation. Engage in world-class research and innovation, right? That's also an institutional objective. Nurture creativity and innovation among the students. Right, this is also an institutional objective. Make career opportunities available to the students. Build a strong alumni network. transform students into productive and responsible members of the society. So you say large number of institutional objectives, and then we say, okay, we have a faculty crunch. And then immediately we say, okay, how do we meet all these institutional objectives if we don't have enough faculty even to teach? Okay, now this is a question, it's a right question to ask, but at the same time, you see what we do at IIT Bombay is to involve students. We involve students in some of the activities and collaborate with the students so as to meet these institutional objectives. So let me start with first example. First example is to deliver quality education, right? This is of course the most important objective of any institution is to deliver quality education. But the critical factor in delivering quality instruction is the passion of the faculty towards teaching. Unless a faculty member is passionate about teaching, you cannot deliver quality instruction. So now first requirement is of course passion on the part of the faculty members. But mere instruction by a very high caliber faculty member, let's say faculty member is very passionate about teaching and he is teaching with all his heart, he is teaching, right? But mere instruction by a high caliber faculty member does not ensure that every student in the class is benefited. Now you know this. Why is every student in the class not benefited? Because there is no personal attention possible. Now especially in a large classroom like this, it is simply impossible for a faculty member to stand here and pay individual attention to every single student sitting in the class. It is not possible, right? So the lack of individual attention, and as a result of which a significant section of the students of this class are not benefited. So this is the point. Yes, you require high caliber faculty members, you require faculty members who are passionate about teaching, but at the same time, you need to also give individual attention, which is not possible when one faculty member is addressing some 350 students. So what do we do? As a result of this problem, what has happened is the goal of delivering quality education remains unfulfilled. Now, goal of delivering quality instruction remains unfulfilled. So what do we do about this? Well, at IIT Bombay, we have seen that there are close to about 1,000 students, who are joining our postgraduate program. Okay? And majority of these students, they get one of the two assistantships. Either they get a teaching assistantship or they get a research assistantship. A teaching assistantship requires them to spend about 8 hours per week, whereas a research assistantship requires them to spend about 20 hours per week. Now let me just talk about the teaching assistants. Now we in fact collaborate with these teaching assistants, these students who receive the teaching assistantship. We collaborate with them and take their assistance. So teaching assistants assist us in preparing the presentation materials for the class. They assist us in looking for the required material and then preparing the material, either it's in the form of a PowerPoint or some other way. They prepare the material and it helps us to deliver this to a large class. They help us in conducting the tutorials. Tutorials are small groups of students, and the teaching assistants actually negotiate through the problems. They help the students work through the problems. They provide assistance to a small group of students. They help us in conducting the tutorials. They help us in drafting questions. They help us in drafting questions for the examination. Please note, I'm saying not setting questions, right? They are not setting questions, they are drafting questions. And in fact, after the questions are set, we are the ones, the faculty members are the ones who actually moderate the paper. The question papers are moderated by the faculty members. Right? They help us in invigilating the examination, obviously, because if there is a large classroom consisting of 350 students, well, you cannot seat the students in one classroom, they have to be distributed in several classrooms, and one faculty member has to go from classroom to classroom answering the questions, so obviously he needs help in invigilation. So the teaching assistants help us in invigilation. They help us in grading the assignments, they help us in grading the quizzes, and they help us in grading the examination. The final examinations also, we take the help of the teaching assistants. And they provide feedback to the instructors. This is very, very important, because when you have a large classroom like this, provided there is no conflict in the instruction hour, our teaching assistants actually sit in the classroom. They sit in the classroom and they are also taking down the notes. And they are also looking around to see if the students are able to receive the instruction well. But if they find that the students are not able to understand something, then they come back and give us this feedback saying that, well, certain concept that you covered in today's class, they are not well received by the students, you may have to slow down or you may have to go over those concepts again. So this is a very important feedback that the teaching assistants give us, right? So this is providing feedback to the instructor. So the faculty's important thing here is the faculty and the TAs form a single unit. This is very, very important. You say, okay, I take assistance. Well, taking assistance is not the point. The point is that you have to form a single unit. The faculty members and the teaching assistants form a single unit and they have to function as a single unit. Form a single unit and function as a single unit. What do we mean by functioning as a single unit? That in case there is any query from the student, no matter whom he approaches, any of the TAs or the instructor, he should receive only one single answer. Of course, if the TA is not very confident, he can always say, well, I'm not very sure, go and talk to the faculty member. He can do that. But if he is going to give an answer, it has to be something which has been agreed upon previously. He cannot be giving an answer on his own, or he cannot be, coming up with some impromptu answer, right? Okay, so this is important. This is how the students help us in delivering quality instruction. Now, the benefits of the TA program, well, not only the students are benefited, of course the students are benefited. Because when we have these small tutorials which are being handled by the TAs, the student can actually raise their doubts, they can get their queries answered in a very informal setup. The students will feel a little intimidated if they have to get up in a large classroom like this and ask their doubt, because they will always feel shy, or they may feel that they are asking a very stupid question and that other students may laugh at them. So that is why people hold back their question. But in an informal setup, they are very free with the TAs. They can always ask their question and get their doubts clarified. And also, in case the instructor, the faculty member is out of town for some reason, for official work, etc., in that case, well, the students can always raise their queries with the TAs. So these are some benefits to the students. And of course, our postgraduate students who work as TAs, they are also benefited through this TA program, because it helps them in revising some of the concepts that they have learned long ago in their undergraduate program. And also, they begin to appreciate a new dimension that emerges when they are called upon to answer a question or to explain an answer. And basically what that means is that we are preparing our TAs for a teaching career after they graduate from IIT Bombay. Right? So these are some of the benefits of the TA program, and I will skip over this, because in the following sessions the students are going to discuss about some of these activities of the teaching assistants and research assistants. But I'll give you one more example as to how our students help us in our research and development activities. How do they help us in our research and development activities? IIT Bombay R&D focus is closely aligned with the national goal of achieving self-reliance, and the students and the faculty conduct research in the thrust areas of science and technology here at IIT Bombay. And IIT Bombay has got several ongoing research collaborations with national universities, international universities, governments, as well as public sector industries and private industries. And the preeminent position that IIT Bombay enjoys at the cutting edge of research is reflected in this wide range of research projects possible due to the collaborative efforts of the students and the faculty. Please note, our research efforts are these joint efforts of the students and the faculty. When we say our research, it's actually we are talking about the students' research as well as our research, the joint research activity. So promoting research and development, how do students help us? Well, the research scholars, our PhD students, are the ones who are going to be the backbone of research. They are the ones who help us in setting up our labs. They are the ones who are going to help us in acquiring new equipment, new instruments for the lab. They help us maintaining some of the research infrastructure that exists in the lab. They familiarize the new students, new research scholars who join the lab with the work culture as well as with the instruments. They familiarize them with the instruments. That is because there has to be some continuity. There has to be continuity not only in the project but also in the work ethics that exists in the lab. They also guide our bachelor's and the master's students, and also some of the external interns, students who come from other institutions. They also help them in their research. So our research is largely helped by the research scholars, our PhD students, and there are also a number of student research projects which are ongoing, and these research projects are actually the stepping stones of research, stepping stones for our research. So when we take up a research project, we have actually broken down that research project into small projects. And those small projects are being handled by our undergraduate students, a little bigger project being handled by our master's students. Of course, the PhD student is the one who is taking care of a very large section of this, or a very large portion of this research proposal. Now here we have the BTech projects, we have supervised learning projects, we have the dual degree projects, we have the MTech projects, and all these projects have got some credits associated with them. Of course, there are also some projects where there are no credits. I'll come to that in the next slide. But the students generally select the topic. Say here we don't trust any project onto a student. We don't allot a topic to a student. It is for the student to select a project. The students select a project and works under the guidance of the faculty members, and students actually work on several interdisciplinary topics, and that is what helps to bring researchers or faculty members from different departments together. It is actually a little effort that is made by the student to contact different faculty members and bring those faculty members together. So this is something which the students greatly, we are greatly benefited from. The students also, by having these projects, these projects also help our students to gain valuable research experience and also help the faculty to make further incremental increase in their research goals. So the point is that you should always look at a student's project as a small stepping stone. It's an incremental progress that the faculty member is making in his progress, in his research work. Okay. Now, now this slide is actually talking about some other mechanisms by which you can engage a student. Although the student is actually not working on a project which is required as per his curriculum, but many a times our students come and approach us and say, sir, we have read something about this particular research. It appeared in the newspaper, it appeared in somewhere else, and we read about this and we find it very fascinating and we want to be part of this. So can you please give us some simple project that we can execute? Now you see, this is happening in the middle of the semester. And then you say, well, okay, why don't you wait till you, register for a BTech project or a MTech project? No, they say, no sir, we are not, we'll do that anyway, but can you give us an opportunity to work on a small project? Now this need not be part of our curriculum. The students themselves are saying, we are willing to work outside our curriculum. So can you please give us a project? So, okay, the student comes and he does a very good, puts in satisfactory quantum of work, he delivers a good quality of work. Now how do you recognize those efforts? You recognize those efforts by giving him a credential. Now this is not a grade, but this is a credential. Credential is Undergraduate Research Award, URA. Now this is a credential that is offered, and this particular credential appears in his grade sheet. So when the employers look at it or anybody else later looks at it, well, they know that the student has gone out of his way and done a project which has been recognized by IIT Bombay. So this is URA. So URA 1 is actually awarded for satisfactory quantum of work, while as URA 2, URA 3 is for truly exceptional work that students do. Sometimes our BTech students do exceptional piece of work and something that you expect from MTech students. But the BTech student is able to deliver that kind of a work, and then you actually then recommend the URA 02. URA 02, which means, or URA 03, which means that there are some additional credits that are being attached to that particular project. And because of these additional credits, there will be a boost in the CPI of that student who delivers this quality project. Then we have the summer research projects. Summer research projects wherein the students may actually come over the summer, or our own students may actually want to work in the summer in order to explore some of the research activities which are there in the department. So those are the SURP summer research projects. And of course we have the research interns. These are the students from institution like yours who would like to come to IIT Bombay and would like to gain some experience by doing some work at IIT Bombay. So these are the research internships that we offer, and these are all students who are actually doing work and that work is going to enhance the quality of our research. So this is the point to be kept in mind. Okay, our students also not just do projects, but they also engage themselves in some of these activities. Activities like in-house symposiums, which are organized by every department. They also have, many of the departments also have open days, or they have these technical fairs. Now technical fairs or open days, they are able to showcase the topic, showcase some research topic which attracts some young researchers. And then we have this Tech Connect. Tech Connect or part of Tech Fest. That's an exhibition that is organized by IRCC. IRCC is Industrial Research Consultancy Center and the Tech Fest team. And our students take active part in this. And of course you may say, okay, taking active part in this, how does it promote your research? Right? You could ask that. Okay, they are putting up some banners, how does it promote your research? Well, actually taking part in these activities or taking part in these events aids this student-faculty interaction, because it is during this time that the faculty and the students sit together and they spend quality time together discussing research. So that is, it aids the student-faculty interaction. It orients some of the students who are not so much oriented towards research, but when they see that these activities are being held in the institute, they also get oriented towards research. It creates a very supportive environment for the students who are presenting some posters or giving a talk, and it also improves the quality of the research output in the long run. So, and please note one thing here, our students are our collaborators, and many patents which have been filed by IIT Bombay have got student contributors. This is very important. Many of the patents that have been filed by IIT Bombay have got student contributors, right? Okay. Now, what I will do is I'll go over this very quickly because we are running out of time. I will not, because anyway the students are going to be discussing with you about some of these activities which nurture creativity and innovation among the students. One is the STAB, second is the TDSL. Of course, there's going to be a session on that. So I think I will skip here, but the point to be noted here, in all these activities, remember there is only one faculty coordinator, one person, one faculty coordinator, and he is collaborating with the students to bring about this activity, to enhance this or to promote this institutional objective. You know, here is one faculty advisor who's collaborating with the General Secretary of Technical Affairs, and there are several hobby clubs, etc. So which are all, they're all being handled by the students, but with the objective is to nurture creativity among the students, which is an institutional objective. Right? There are other, avenues also available. And of course, there's going to be a session on placement cell. So we will, our students will be discussing with you as to how they collaborate, how the faculty and the students collaborate to increase the placement opportunities which are available for the students. Again, you see there is one professor in charge and large number of students. They're collaborating with a large number of students to, increase the number of placement opportunities which are available to the students. Of course, the students will be discussing this with you at a later cell, and of course students who are not interested in placements, there is an entrepreneurship cell also available on the campus. There is a career cell. Again, this is largely handled by the students, the career cell and the career cell activities. And building a strong network, how the faculty collaborates with the students to build a very strong network. There is the student alumni relationship cell, and we will be discussing that in the breakaway session. And lastly, I just want to say that, one of the institutional objectives is to provide for discovery and pursuit of passion among students. Discovery and pursuit, you have to give the students an opportunity to discover and pursue their passion. Now, I think I'll just end with this. I don't know how many of you have seen this Hindi movie called Dangal. How many of you have seen this movie, Dangal? Okay, well, very glad that many of you have seen the movie. Do you know who's the director of this movie? Who's the director of this movie? Nitish Tiwari. And you know something about Nitish Tiwari? Nitish Tiwari happens to be an alumnus of IIT Bombay. Nitish Tiwari, who won the Filmfare Award for Dangal, is an alumnus of IIT Bombay. He's a graduate of the Department of Metallurgical Engineering and Material Science. Now, this is what I mean by saying that one of the institution's objective is to provide for discovery and pursuit of passion. This is very important. You have to give them the opportunity to discover where their passion lies, right? And here is a student. Of course, he was a good student. I wouldn't say he was excellent, but he was a good student, right? He attended all the classes. Point is that even during his stay here, during his tenure here as a student, he was largely involved in writing plays. He was largely involved in in dramatics. He was largely involved in performing arts festival. So he was a student who found his calling, who found his inner calling. This, as they say, inner calling. He found his inner calling in movie making. And today, of course, he has excelled in that. So an institutional objective is to provide for this discovery and pursuit of passion. And towards that end, I'm very happy to say that at IIT Bombay, we have these, various faculty-student collaborations working in order to provide the students with this pursuit of passion, with this discovery and pursuit of passion. We have the sports pursuit. We have a faculty in charge whom we call as the chairman sports. And then for the cultural pursuits, of course, we have a chairman cultural, who is also a faculty member. There's only one faculty member, but there are a large group of students who are working in collaboration with that faculty member in order to provide for opportunities and in order to provide for in order to achieve the institutional objectives of this institute. I think with that I will end. And thank you very much for listening to me.